You're listening to The Voice of Russia with me, Juliet Spare. From domestic goddess to domestic violence, shocking pictures have emerged of multi-millionaire British art collector Charles Saatchi with his hands round his wife Nigella Lawson's throat in public. The photographs published across the world show the fear in the celebrity chef's eyes as her husband clasps her neck. Saatchi subsequently visited a police station in London where he voluntarily accepted a caution for his behaviour, following legal advice, and in the hope the couple could draw an end to the episode, which he referred to in a newspaper as a playful tiff. Nigella Lawson has, like so many victims of abuse, stayed silent. Her experience, captured by a freelance photographer, reflects an aspect of society that cuts across all social classes: domestic violence. A report by the World Health Organization, the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, and the South African Medical Research Council suggests that 35% of women around the world are victims of sexual or physical violence. A statement released by the World Health Organization said that violence against women is a global health problem of epidemic proportions. Joining me in the studio is Penny Beale, who founded the Penny Beale Memorial Fund after her daughter, also called Penny, was murdered by her partner. Leanne Higgins, who is the chief executive of an educational project called Deal with DV. Leanne was abused by her ex-partner. And Joe Hemmings is a celebrity behavioural psychologist and a relationship coach. I'm going to ask, first of all, if Penny, if you wouldn't mind sharing with us today the experience of being a mother whose daughter lost her life at the hands of a partner who abused her.
Well, you never get over it. I realised that Penny's relationship with Moffat started in 2000 was a bit iffy, to put it mildly, because her lovely, bubbly nature was changing. She became withdrawn, cowed, and certainly not herself. Then I noticed the physical bruises, etc., started to appear as well. I was called upon quite a lot by her to the hospital because of various injuries she'd received from him. It got to the stage where I thought he was going to kill her and kept saying so to various authorities. I think initially I was taken as a mad mother. I do remember saying, "Don't tell me when I have to go to the morgue to identify the body," which is what I had to do. It was too late. The final attack culminated in 123 injuries, which pierced her lungs, her liver and her spleen. I was told she couldn't have lived for more than an hour and a half with those injuries. I hope she didn't live that long. So since then, I've tried to turn what is the most horrific thing that can happen to a parent into a positive by using her terrible end to make others aware, and to using training in schools, frontline staff, etc. It occurs to me that this is an example of how domestic violence goes right across the board. It's every class, every income, every group of intelligence, you name it, it's there, which I find is one of the things most difficult to persuade people that domestic violence really is across the board and not just the lady with 11 children in the council house.
No one knows what goes on behind closed doors. You mentioned, Penny, about turning the most horrific experience into something positive and dealing with frontline staff. Was your daughter failed in some way?
Yes, very much so, which the police and the medical profession fully admitted after I've had an apology from the Chief Constable of Sussex. Now we all work together because we know that there's still a long way to go to improve services. But yes, she was. They admit it, so now let's get it right.
You also mentioned you try and deal with the problem by helping frontline staff. This sounds something similar to your story, Leanne. If you could tell us why you decided to set up the educational project Deal with DV, domestic violence.
I set up Deal with DV because myself, I was a teenager, had relationships, thought they were normal. I thought, in a sense, abuse was normal. So certain of the warning signs, so the control, the jealousy, you believe because they love you and they care about you. I got into a relationship that started off like that, but it was great. We laughed, we went out, we enjoyed ourselves. But it became physical after a year or so, where he used to black eye, bruises. I was isolated from my friends and my family. He took over my whole network of friends. So he knew where I was, who I was speaking to. He became close to my family, even to a point where certain of my family members would listen to him more than myself. So when they saw black eyes or bruises, it was mainly blamed on myself, something I did. I was out late, so I deserved it. Or I was around friends and I didn't contact him, and other little things. And I kind of started blaming myself for it. It's not until it got really bad, when I had a black eye, I've had bruises, and I decided to get up and leave. That was my choice, and it was a very, very hard choice to make. But I believe that the abuse wouldn't stop, because one punch turned into two, every argument even more, and then you get scared of what you might say because you're scared of how the person's going to react towards you. And your whole attitude has to change towards arguments or even going out or doing the simplest task. You're scared of how his reaction might be, and I couldn't live with that anymore, so I decided to leave. It was hard for me because, like I said, he was tied in with my family, my friends, and they all tried to get us back together, and he said he was sorry, cried, did everything possible to get back with me, took me out to eat, all the nice things that he knows that I would like, and to sweep me over in a sense. And that happened for a good couple months, about 6 months, going back and forth, fighting, okay, let's try and see if it works out. He would be good, in a sense, for a month or so, and then it will start again. And it was just this circle that just kept on going round and round and round. And the last incident is literally I got held down and beaten for 45 minutes. Just numerous hits, punches, slaps, being restrained, so I couldn't leave the house, I couldn't answer the phone. I did eventually get out of that and literally ran out, and I had to think about it myself. Can I live like this? Can I carry on my life like this, living a double life? Outside, everybody thought I was fine. I went to work as normal. They saw attitude change in the sense of I wasn't as bubbly as I was before and as happy, but I still got on with it. I still interacted with young people because I'm a youth worker. But that last incident took it all out of me, and I didn't know where to go. And I decided I'm going to call the police. I'm going to make it formal because that's the only way he's going to stop. I did make it formal. I went through a whole procedure of the police, and then I went through housing because he was still stalking me, asking people where I was, making sure he turned up at different places. Because I used to go out quite a lot with my friends, out to eat or out to drink. And because he knew the regular places, he would turn up there. And in the end, because we have the same friends, it was very hard to detangle yourself. And it took me a very long time. I went through counselling. I had an advocate. I had a lot of time off work for depression. But during that time, I started thinking about what I want and who I am as a person. And then out of that is how I developed Deal with DV. And I developed it because I don't want any person to feel how I felt. I felt isolated. I felt alone. And I felt hurt because I wondered, why me? Why did this happen to me? Am I such a bad person? And I feel like, especially young people, because I work with young people, I think that it's different when you speak about young people because they feel like they can't speak to adults because they don't understand. So they mostly turn to their peers, and their peers think it's normal. Like in the environment of youth culture now, some of the things I'm hearing since I've been doing this project, that abuse is normal. The person is allowed to look through their phone because they care about them, because they love them. And it's really sad because if it starts from young, then they're going to carry on through their life expecting this and thinking that abuse in a relationship or violence is normal. So I'm trying to help hopefully show young people that a healthy relationship doesn't involve any of those things and how to look at the warning signs for it.
Just briefly before I come to you, Jo Hemmings, what did you think when you saw these pictures of Nigella Lawson?
I had a mixed reaction on it. It's sad, and it really is, because it happens. But at the same time, I was slightly glad in the sense of it's out in the open. It's something showing that it does happen, and it can happen to anybody, and that the media is now realising it's not just some unknown person in the state or anything like that. It can happen to a celebrity, like we said, that feels like they have everything that they need, but within closed doors you don't know what happens. So I was upset for her in the situation, but I was slightly happy that it's come to light and they're realising that it's a bigger issue than they actually know that it is, or they want to think that it is.
Jo Hemmings, you're a celebrity behavioural psychologist and relationship coach then. Hearing these distressful stories, when you looked at these pictures, what was your analysis of it in terms of how they are as a couple, or what legacy this will have on other victims of domestic abuse?
I was shocked because it was, like all of us, a couple that appear to have it all. It was in the open air. It wasn't even behind closed doors. It was described as a playful tiff, which is perhaps one of the worst things he could have said, given it was a 27-minute systematic attack, really, of abuse. It wasn't just a simple moment of catching a few photographs. That went on for 27 minutes. So that, to me, would show the extent of how insidious the level of domestic abuse has become in that relationship. You would be able to say, this is not the first time it has happened, simply because of the fact it was out of doors, in a public place, and it went on for such a long time, and was then, as Leanne said, when she was so, describing her own situation so well, this playful tiff, this throwing it off, is apportioning blame to his partner. An overreaction, basically, by her, by the paparazzi at the quartet, and by the reaction of the public that followed it.
What legacy will this have on their marriage when something like this systematic abuse that continued for 27 minutes is captured and presented to the public? Does this give... Is this in any way empowering to someone that they would think, well, everyone knows about it now, I can talk about it? Or will it mean that someone like Nigella, who is so prominent in the public eye, will just retract?
Well, it's interesting right now because you've got conflicting news reports currently. One saying Nigella is going to be divorcing Saatchi. She doesn't wear a wedding ring anymore, so she's taken the first step to actually leaving the home. The other reports are saying it looks like she might be able to forgive him and get back together. Now, interesting, as much as the occurrence highlights, importantly, the issue of domestic abuse, actually, so does the outcome. Because if someone like Nigella, who can afford, for example, to leave her partner, in a lot of cases people can't do that, chooses to stay with this controlling man in that sort of abusive relationship, that's a very poor subsequent message going out there to people who might have taken some optimism or hope from the fact that actually she decided it gave her enough strength to walk away from the relationship.
Yes, what do you think about that, Leanne, with your work with younger people, and that the legacy and the message that this gives out, and the fact that the World Health Organization says, this is a problem of epidemic proportions worldwide? Not a lot rests on Nigella, but she's pretty high profile. This is a difficult situation. As someone who works with young people, how much do they glean from the behaviour of celebrities?
They're influenced a lot by what they see, what they hear. One of the things that we like to come across a lot is that leaving isn't easy. I was happy enough to leave, but it wasn't an easy decision. I did go back numerous times thinking, okay, maybe he's changed, maybe it will help. So in a sense of Nigella, I think it's that same situation. It isn't easy. It's something that you have to think about, and it's something that takes a long journey of time. So with the young people, yes, they do look up to her, and whatever she decides to do next, in a sense, will young people will look at and will judge and say, well, if she didn't leave, I don't have to, or it can have mixed messages. So it's up to her what kind of happens next. Now, I'd like to see what does happen, because like you said in the newspaper, there's two different sides, and she actually hasn't come out, I don't think, and actually said anything publicly on what she may do.
We are on the verge of falling into a trap here and putting an awful lot of onus on the victim. But I would rather like the perpetrator to go to acknowledge that he is in the wrong and go and get himself some help, because I think that if you put your hands around your partner's throat, it's an indication to me that you are in need of some help, because that is not normal, acceptable behaviour in an equal relationship.
And do you think this is the trap that people do fall into? We almost did ourselves, and I could take responsibility for that, sort of talking about the Nigella and what she will do as if she is the victim and that she stayed silent. And actually, we need to look back at, hold a minute, what's the perpetrator done here?
Well, I think from what we're saying, and from what I understand the media is saying, and as I said, I haven't actually read it, there's an awful lot of pressure adding to the pressure that this woman's already got, coming from the media. I don't suppose she cares what on earth the media is doing at the minute, because she's got enough on her plate as it is. But I do think that the media will affect, as you say, how other people see things and how they might react. I think it's unfair to put this amount of pressure.
I think that, in my opinion, the playful, that he said that it was a playful incident, I don't understand how he can justify that as playful, and how the media can accept that as an excuse.
I think that was about the fact that this was a private matter.
Yeah,
and how dare the media interfere with a tiff, an argument he was having with his wife.
In a public place.
In a public place. And of course, if they'd just been shouting at each other and she'd run off in tears, it might have occupied, page 16, a small paragraph of the press, or not at all. But because it was physical violence in an open place, this was indeed shocking. And of course, he is in a place where it is about control, and he clearly doesn't have any. It's fascinating, listening to both Penny and Leanne, because the people that have the least control, the perpetrators, believe themselves to have the most control. So they're interesting people to work with from a psychological perspective, because firstly, you've got to convince them that they actually have a problem. Once you've convinced them they have a problem, because they think the next time it won't happen, it was a one-off, or, yes, we'd had a couple of drinks, it was justifiable, or it was her fault. So once they acknowledge they have a problem, then you've got to work on it. I don't expect Saatchi is at a stage, although he went to a police station, accept a caution for the sake of the media. I don't imagine he's anywhere near the kind of place where he would accept that he has issues.
You're listening to The Voice of Russia from London with me, Juliet Spare, and we're discussing domestic violence against women. I'm joined in the studio by Penny Beale, who founded the Penny Beale Memorial Fund after her daughter was abused and murdered by her partner. Leanne Higgins, who is the head of an educational project called Deal with DV. Leanne also suffered abuse at the hands of her ex-partner. And Joe Hemmings, who is a celebrity behavioural psychologist and relationship coach, is here to offer her expert opinion on the recent picture that emerged of Nigella Lawson's face with her husband's hands clasped around her throat. Is there enough help out there for both victims and perpetrators, and those perpetrators who do want to seek help and change, Penny?
There is some. For perpetrators, there's one organisation that's Telephone Respect. Unfortunately, the only other help is usually by the time they're convicted, they may be able to go on a course. For victims, there are agencies, as we all know. There's Refuge, Women's Aid, various other smaller organisations. Different areas have different systems. There's never enough, but it is out there. So I would encourage anybody that's in a bad relationship to go and get some help.
In your experience with what happened to your daughter and Moffat, if you could turn back time, would you consider hoping that he would have acknowledged what his behaviour was like and got help?
I'm obviously very closely involved with this one, so I'm not as rational as I might be with others. I don't think knowing Moffat, that he would ever acknowledge that anything was his fault. He was a very controlling, manipulative man. In the interim, I have discovered that Penny was certainly not his first victim. I just hope he doesn't have any more. He will be released tomorrow from a life sentence of 11 years.
How does that make you feel?
I'm as angry today as I was 12 years ago. Sorry to do that to you. I only heard myself last week that he's just got parole. My fear is that if he is still dangerous, which I think is quite likely, there may be more victims to come. So I would take any advantage to promote awareness of domestic violence, and please get help. And if you're in any doubt about a partner, new or old, please go and find out, which I think you can probably do now more easily.
There was a law passed, I think, called Jane's Law.
Claire's
Law.
Yeah.
Claire's Law that does give you the
It's
right
being
to,
trialled, I think.
in the Northwest.
Yeah. I'm very much. I'm pleased you know about that, because I will use my situation definitely to back that campaign. I think it's very important that anybody with a new partner, or if their close relatives are a little bit concerned, you should be able to ask your local police, if Claire's Law goes across the country, if there is a history of abuse from that perpetrator, from that new partner.
I think also the idea of encouraging people to recognise the signs of toxicity in a relationship, because it very often starts in an emotionally abusive way, not a physically abusive way. These perpetrators are often full of guile, very charming, very possessive, as Leanne was saying, possessive, jealous. Actually, some of the things that you want someone to love you so much, they're looking out for you. It's a very fine line when it tips over, and a lot of it is about getting inside your head to erode your self-esteem, to give you the controlling position before a finger is laid on anybody. And I think it's very important for women to understand signs. A lot of men, of course, won't go on to physically abuse them after this emotional abuse, but however, it very often does start like that. It doesn't start with someone, with a gross physical act. It'll start with emotional abuse, and it'll start with the first shove, at which point that's a very, very loud warning bell.
But can a couple go back from that if help is sought?
I'd like to think a couple could. I mean, obviously I'm sitting here with two people who've had first-hand experience in the most awful way. Yes, anger management helps. Understanding, therapy helps. Going back, often abusers have been abused as children. Some can't be helped. Some can be helped. But help, you can't do it on your own. The victim cannot do this on her own. So unless the abuser is willing to admit they have a problem and see through the necessary rehabilitation, there won't be a chance. But if they do, there's a possibility, of course. People shouldn't be always assumed to be that kind of person for the rest of their lives if they're willing to change it.
You're listening to The Voice of Russia from London with me, Juliet Spare, and we're discussing domestic violence against women. Penny,
I've heard of one or two, but very, very few couples that have either gone back and had a reasonable relationship or stayed together through. I've heard of far more who've parted from each other and then gone on afterwards to have reasonable relationships after therapy or help, whatever.
Than changing within a relationship, whatever happens.
Yes,
absolutely
I think I wouldn't suggest that a victim suggests to their perpetrator that they go and get help because they get smacked in the gob.
And there's also fear and trust issues in any relationship that has that level of toxicity, whether it's infidelity, whatever. It's very difficult to come back from that. So I think I agree here with Penny. And often if you could get the perpetrator in the next relationship to change rather than within the one they're in, 'cause I think probably the damage is been done.
obviously the reason we're all sitting here today is from the publication of these images. But personally, I always like to follow something up like that up with a discussion that doesn't just talk about the pictures, although the psychological dissemination of them is fascinating. But it does throw up the importance and the prevalence of domestic abuse and how it should be talked about and how women do need more help or men need help. Leanne, I'm interested because you do work with younger children. After this discussion, and obviously there's not just Nigella as a high-profile celebrity, there's Rihanna, there's others that have been abused domestically by their partners. What do you go away and tell the younger generation? Because that's our future.
We look at the prevention side, so looking at the warning signs, because I believe if you get them from young, because what it is with a lot of organisations or people that work with domestic violence, there's children and then there's adult services, and there's been this gap in the middle of the young people. And young people, as you know, have their own culture, have the way of doing things, the way of talking, so it's called youth culture. And I think they're left out quite a lot and they're not taken seriously. Recently, as everybody probably knows, the law has now moved to 16-year-olds being 16 to 18 now in the age bracket of domestic violence. And then anybody under that is classed as a child. And for me, within the service that I do, there's not enough help for anybody aged 13 to 16, which is the age I predominantly work with, because they class you as a child or they class you as an adult. In what I do, I find it very hard because young people, services that they need to be out of hours, and that's something that I'm trying to speak to about other organisations. You've moved the age down to 16, but if a young person who's on the street at 8, 9 o'clock at night is being abused, the only phone line available is the Women's Aid one, which is great because it is a resource. But what else is there? There needs to be more. There needs to be more support. The teenage relationships need to be taken seriously because this is what forms the process and the cycle into their adulthood.
Penny, finally, I think all of us in here had not just a lump in the throat, but my heart certainly skipped a beat when you mentioned your daughter's murderer would be released tomorrow. I'd like to give you a final word with your thoughts from our discussion today, or what you hope or what you would like to achieve, or how you feel with what's been dealt to you.
Oh, to me, I certainly got the bad cards, didn't I? What I want to happen is for no one to be living in fear, which is the phrase I use when I go into schools, which I do quite a lot, and to be able to recognise the signs and to be able to get help if they need it.
Sadly, we've come to the end of our discussion. If you've been affected by the issues we've talked about, there is help available. Please contact Women's Aid or Refuge, and they can be found online. I'd also like to thank my guests, Leanne Higgins from Deal with DV, behavioural psychologist Joe Hemmings, and Penny Beale from the Penny Beale Memorial Fund.org.